Actually, I think, yeah, we might as well just get started now. So, hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to this session. So my name is Alejandro Paz. I will be your session leader today. I am currently a volunteer analyst with the Environmental Data and Governance Initiative. I also work at MIT Libraries as the Energy and Environment Librarian. And so today, I hope to share with you some interesting information about a project we're working on in EDGI around environmental regulations. This is something that I think has a lot of relevance to the work ESA folk do. And today, hopefully, we'll have a lot of fun discovering some earth science data and other informational assets and looking at how they might impact people who are tackling the issue of writing effective public comments to proposed environmental rules. So before, I just want to quickly talk about us, the session organizers. So I am a member of EDGI. So we are an organization that works to document, analyze, and provide recommendations on the governance of public federal environmental information and data. We are an organization that really promotes a lot of participatory processes and kind of democratic organization and work. We are very interested in government accountability, and we also are currently focusing on a number of interesting initiatives that around the environmental right to know, which I will talk about in a few seconds. Specifically, I am a member of the website governance project. So historically, we have done a lot of work monitoring government websites, specifically changes to the sites, documenting cases where information might have been altered or removed in ways that were problematic. So we've written a lot of reports around that over the years. Some of them have been covered on the news. So we're very interested in safeguarding public information and just thinking of better ways to allow engagement with that information, specifically environmental information on websites, particularly the Environmental Protection Agency site. For the last few years, we've done a lot of reporting on federal website governance, and this includes, access to data, access to environmental information, federal science communication, like how are websites written, what kind of information can you find in them? Is the information appropriate to the level of the readers that are consuming this information, to the audience? We've done a lot of work around thinking about how to safeguard public information whenever a new environmental regulation is proposed. This is particularly relevant. For example, a few years ago, there was a repeal of the Clean Power Act, and around the time that regulation was repealed, or it was the proposal to repeal that regulation happened. Around that time, there were some unfortunate changes to the Environmental Protection Agency website that we think harmed people's ability to learn about that regulation, and I think was deeply problematic. So while we work to think about how to improve the way federal agencies share environmental information, we've done a lot of reporting on that. In this session, specifically, we at EDGI are gonna explore, how, give me a second. We wanna explore, how federal environmental information makes an impact in how people do research when writing and submitting public comments. So, many people engage with scientific information through, public participatory democratic processes, which are managed by federal agencies such as EPA. And I think this is a great avenue for exploring the impacts of open science and how to take advantage of existing structures, services, assets that have been built out over the years with open science in mind. And, we think those of you in the room would have an interesting perspective on some of the work we're doing, since we think you have a relevant expertise, and we hope that through the session and future conversations, we can have a positive impact in this realm. So, EDGI, we are strong believers of the environmental right to know. So a strong, so as people, seek out to learn about their environment, they're gonna undoubtedly encounter a number of ways of getting information and places to find it. We think open science practices could really help enable the public's, right to learn more about what is affecting their lives in terms of environmental conditions. And in particular, taking that few steps forward, this has strong relevance to participating in a democracy, right? So if people are not giving the tools and the information they need to meaningfully input comments and get feedback to what the government is doing, that would have a negative impact in society. And there's many ways of tackling this challenge. So for today, we're going to talk about public comments, which are a strong, an important angle in how the government kind of collects information around what people think about its actions. And I think it's going to be a fun session today. So right now, EDGI, we have this project, the Proposed Rule Project, that is really trying to tackle two challenges. So today, we're mostly going to focus on the first bullet point here, locating relevant background information and data to inform comments on proposed environmental rules. I just want to, again, acknowledge that there's also the important aspect of safeguarding existing information. And so maybe we can talk about that a little bit later today, but that's also an important feature of our project. So we are very interested in creating guides that will help people who are writing public comments do so effectively. So we want to create guides that will help people sort of approach the public comment process more thoughtfully, and give them better opportunities to comment through timely information, through relevant information, and taking advantage of the many tools and assets that are out there that can help you engage with existing federal science, so that their comments are informed and relevant to what the government is proposing and so on. So in this session, we're gonna kind of explore the intersections between the world of earth science data, information, especially information that is managed by the federal government, and what happens when environmental regulations are proposed by the government. And we're also gonna hopefully take what we learned today and try to ideate on how EDGI can move forward in this project in a constructive manner. And we're gonna expand on all of those ideas in a few seconds. But so I'm looking forward to it. I'm gonna first go over some background information, and then we're gonna dive into an activity. So we're gonna be breaking out into groups, and I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. So I've mentioned public comments several times already, and I just wanted to go into some detail about what I mean by that. So public comments are really just opportunities for people who are not part of the government, whether it's just regular citizens, a nonprofit organization, maybe an industry group, to provide input on government decisions or decision-making processes. So a public comment can be something as direct as, talking to staff members from, let's say, the Environmental Protection Agency during a Zoom webinar, like you see here in this screenshot on the slide, during a formal listening session. There are a number of other ways of providing public comment. You can submit comments online, for example. So we have an example here of regulations.gov, which is a portal where you can find information on federal regulations and actually submit written comments on the regulations that are being proposed. So the federal government over the years have established a number of processes for calling for public comments, like inviting people to submit their comments. And you can do a lot of this online. And in terms of user experience, it can actually be very simple, but that doesn't mean that the process is actually easy, or engaging in it in an impactful manner can be a challenge. So, there's a lot of information out there just on the proposed rules. For example, you can find it on regulations.gov, the Federal Register, other agency websites, and within a 30 to 90-day period, people will have the opportunity to submit their comments. This whole process, at least when it comes to the federal government, exists as part of an even larger process around rulemaking. And so, we don't have time to go over all of that. I am not necessarily an expert on federal rulemaking, but what I can say is that, it can be a bit difficult for people to wrap their heads around it. And it's just another area where people can find challenges in submitting relevant and effective public comments. But I did want to point to a few things. And one is that when individuals submit their comments to a regulation that is being proposed, the agencies will review those comments and actually integrate them, hopefully, in an actual final rule that is then published. And then from then on, as long as there aren't any other barriers or litigation that would block a rule, that rule becomes final. In this whole process, there's going to be, in some cases, many people submitting comments, and agency staff, contractors working for agencies are going to have to read through these, and so how they're written and what kind of information do they cite is very important. I also wanted to acknowledge that throughout this whole process, there's a lot of research going on in agencies. The agencies take input from a number of advisory panels. And so in some cases, even the scientific research that is ongoing, agencies will provide avenues for the public to provide comment on the scientific process behind crafting a regulation. So there's a lot of ways in which people can, provide public input, but today we're going to focus on proposed regulations. And yeah, it can be tricky to sort of wrap your head around how all of it works. So, as agencies can at times invest significant resources in responding to comments, reading them, but just because agencies have like a mandate to do that, it doesn't mean that every comment is going to have a measurable impact or is going to be very useful to the agencies. So these comments can vary in quality and usefulness, and this is where I think there's a strong avenue for thinking about how to better expose individuals writing these comments to high quality information. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. In this activity, we're going to actually read several public comments that were submitted as part of the public comment process for a new proposed rule on the national ambient quality, air quality standards for particulate matter. So I kind of just wanted to go over a little bit of background of what that involves. And I mean, this is a complex regulation, so I'm just going to go over just a few things that I think will make it a little bit easier for us to kind of wrap our heads around these comments. So, particulate matter, especially particulate matter of a diameter of 2.5 microns or less, is a pollutant. The federal government regulates particulate matter by setting air quality standards. These are based on scientific evidence. It is not necessarily the situation where EPA can, let's say, EPA has an interesting, there are interesting rules around how EPA regulates particulate matter, especially with regards to what states have to do to meet these standards. And so something like the technical feasibility of meeting these standards or the economic impact can be a complicated story that leads to a lot of challenges in crafting good regulation. And so this is where there are a lot of good opportunities for the public to provide meaningful input to the agency when it proposes these rules on these pollutants. So I just have this little visualization here, kind of showing you sort of like the dimensions of particulate matter. I am not super privy on the chemical reactions around how these particles are produced, but basically wildfires, combustion engines, things involving sulfur, usually not great for air quality. So that's sort of what the agency is trying to regulate here. So by law, EPA has to review the national air quality standards regularly, I believe every 5 years. And after a lengthy review process that involves a lot of review of the existing literature, various processes, various opportunities for input, the agency will publish a notice for proposed rulemaking, which is just proposed regulation or a proposed rule. The commenting window for this rule has already closed since that was posted in January. But a lot of people submitted their comments, and we'll be talking about this rule today and some of those comments that individuals submitted. So for this new proposed quality standards, EPA is gonna lower some of the primary standards for particular matter, which I kind of describe here. There's actually a lot that the EPA is proposing and a lot of things that EPA is seeking input on, so we don't have time to go over all of it. I think most attention is on the standards for particular matter 2.5 because this is where there's going to be a lot of impact on public health, and people are very concerned about particulate matter pollution in this country, as I think they should be. So EPA is actually also interested in getting input around how the air quality index is sort of calculated, and we're gonna. Some of you might be interested in looking into that in this session when we actually get into the activity, because I think it's the kind of thing where people writing public comments might struggle to find good relevant information, but if they knew about all the wonderful work that ESIP and agencies like NASA and so on do to provide access to data, it would actually help them to provide good comments. So just to give you an example of what these comments look like that people are submitting to agencies, I have one here. I don't know if this is big enough for you all to see, but this public comment, I'm just gonna read it real quick. It starts, Dear United States Postal Service, I taught 5 years in so on. I could tell without hearing it on the news when the bad air alerts were active. My students and coworkers would use their inhalers. They would get headaches, just not act like they were well. Some kids miss school for a day or two. Please fix this. I urge you to accelerate your work on the particulate matter and ozone national ambient air quality standard updates. Particulate matter and ozone are a threat to the health of everyone, and we need the EPA to recognize that delaying or weakening the NAAQS updates will just lead to more respiratory disease, heart disease, and deaths. And EPA's work to implement and enforce the Clean Air Act has yielded trillions in public health benefits and saved countless lives, so on. Sincerely, and then I censored the author's name. So this comment that you see here is very typical of sort of what people submit when they're providing public comments. They can at times be vague. In this case, the person is addressing the US Postal Service, which is not the right federal group. It should be EPA. And I don't show this here to belittle this particular commenter, because I actually want to demonstrate how people who have perfectly fine and relevant sentiments around the government's actions will at times take time out of their day to submit comments that are unfortunately not including information or not approaching the process in a way that is constructive to what agencies are trying to accomplish. So people will be submitting comments that agencies will have to just kind of look at and say, thanks, and then they're probably not gonna be able to take these opinions into account. So we're really interested in thinking about how do we help people who are interested in writing these public comments approach and research this process in a better way. So in this activity, what we're going to do is we're going to read several public comments, and you can find the PDFs for those in, I hope you have your laptops. Did people bring laptops here? No? Well, maybe you can share. We're going to read several public comments, and then we're going to kind of look at how they approach the federal, the regulation that is being proposed, how they use information. And then I think this will kind of give you an idea of just how people are using earth science data and information to sort of provide public input. So I see that we have several participants online, and yeah, so for those of you online, thank you for participating. If you go to the notes document for the session, you will see that there are several public comments that you can read. So I encourage all of you to select one that you're all interested in, and then we can put you in a breakout group so that you can kind of work through the list of questions we have together. So maybe before we get going, can I get a raise of hands of how many of you have laptops? Okay, cool. Yeah. Oh yeah, so they're in Kiko chat. Okay. Yeah. So please head over to the notes and then scroll down to the section titled Group Activity Number 1. And yeah, maybe it's best if you all try to form groups within this room so you can kind of work on these together. Yeah. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I had it that way. Yeah. At least I had it.
There we go. So I see several people are in the document. So there are 4 public comments here. I recommend that in your group you pick one to read, and there are several questions associated with each document. So we have one from the Sierra Club group in Texas. There's one on wildfires. That's the Nature Conservative comment. There's even one from an industry group. So if you're interested in reading about that, that's an interesting one. And so as you read the comment, I want you to kind of go through the questions and sort of answer them within your group. And then later we're going to come together and kind of reflect on what we learned and what are the implications of this for the use of our science data. So can I just speak to them? Yeah. All right. Hi, folks online. Thank you for joining us. Please pick a comment that you might be interested in working on in your group. I hope you all have access to the. Oh yes, I see you do have access to the notes. Once you know which comment you're gonna work on, just please share that on the chat which one it is, so that I know which one you all read. And if you have any questions, please ask on the chat in case you're confused around what you're supposed to do. Thanks. Yeah, just pick one. Yeah, pick one. Do you guys know which one you're gonna do, or which one is it? Nature Conservancy. So you folks have the Nature Conservancy. So maybe pick another one. Yeah, why don't you do that first one right there? So just open the PDF. And then in the notes doc, that's where the questions are for this particular comment. Yeah, yeah. Cool. And which ones are you ones? Are you? Which ones? What? Oh, why don't you? For now, just go with. How about the Sierra Club one? Yeah, go for that one. And then maybe. Yeah, let's see. Let's see the online folks. Which one they're doing? Do they? It's okay if they. They're sitting around. We're going to comment regardless when we come in for or against it, right? Because now it could have gone either way. They had to have like a strong opinion on it. Future. Well, the way it's standard parts of it, that's it. The beneficial burn. You have to do it in a way that it's smaller size. Yeah, literally, that's what you're saying. But they had better. Yeah, so like 12 to 10 hours. Because it changes all the time. So if you did it days. Yeah, but when you will spread the flex. Right, that's what I'm also good. So they don't do it on the days. Don't do it on the days. I guess they don't. Okay, rain days. No, it's on rain days. No, they're gonna put it out. This is complicated. But why can't they just put in the rule that you exemption for this rule for a reason? Yeah, I think you could make to have rules, right? Kind of manage it, have it. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Sounds like it's a pearl. But if those are resources, yeah, that's true. You can. So what's that? Regulation talking about?
Okay.
So
Oh, yeah.
Permits. So it's in there. When you pick down these it's so title and text. There's nobody's short term that's long term.
Sorry.
Or there's no like I don't think there's part of the music signal. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I know that they had people like just so that they use like yeah, it's a lot. I think it's worth it. Yeah, we just kind of have to There was one that used local data, so they were like, oh, this kind of their local server.
It seems like they have to, if they wanted to use data, So what I was going to say is, I don't know if there's
That's not a good source.
monitoring, just monitoring air quality response around.
Eventually, what we're gonna do is we're just doing this for that. We'll just like
There's a threshold.
think about it. You have to create like so Tarot folder for the source has to show Yeah, so let's give it a few more minutes. Yeah.
Some sort of relation, with a roll burn, polygon, these two related on the receiving end.
Yeah, so if you're talking about present policies, like here, the sensory data is people are doing this actually.
It's been probably later, so like, there are people who who are sifting through the comments and all they're trying to do is they get 1 million comments, maybe like 1,000 comments a page. Form letters. But this should be considered because it's registered organization. You got some substance. So
So you're asking, what is it?
and then it goes to the people who know. Because the people who have this subject area knowledge don't have time to do the whole process. I mean, it's filtered and they basically lose some valuable knowledge.
But they say you're already apparently a
But it is possible.
No, just.
Yeah, so I was thinking like that was the point of this. How many there are?
All they have to do is respond. They don't have to do they have to respond.
Here is actually impacting how the service delivery to engineering. We can't actually see what we're doing as changes. Okay, so
let's
I think that's something that
let's wrap it up, right?
That's what he did. That's he's still.
Yeah. So let's convene again. I hope you found that an interesting exercise, thought-provoking maybe. Yeah. So what did you think? Any reactions from reading those comments? Oh no, yeah. Please tell us more. Yeah. The mic is coming along.
Yeah, we're working on the Sierra Club one, and it makes me want to rewrite it because I'm going through. We're going through his letter, and it's like, okay, he's making these points, but it's not. They're not landing because it doesn't have citations or numbers. A lot of it's anecdotal, and then just even some of the structuring, like just having more citations. It seems like there's a lot of assumptions that the person reading it knows these numbers already or knows these reports already. So yeah, it's kind of frustrating because like you can tell the point they're making, but there's so many things they could add to make it more impactful.
Yeah. So in addition to like adding citations and numbers, would you, if you were speaking to that author or advising that author on their process for writing that comment, would you have recommended anything to them in terms of like, oh, you should look at this resource or this site or this? I'm asking just because I'm curious, since you all come from so many different places that manage environmental inner science data.
Yeah, I don't think we do have any ideas.
What we all talked about kind of came from a viewpoint. We're asking who's reading these comments, and do the writers know how to best reach who is reading them and know what those readers are looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in terms of data, I'm not familiar with what resources are out there for air quality, but I imagine, the writer himself talks about, Harvard and Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. So probably going there, they might have databases, but then also, I'm sure NASA and EPA itself might have some data out there on it.
Yeah. So I can say one thing about the reviewers. Yeah, I mean, it's if you go to the Federal Register, which is sort of the place where these rules are published, there is information on what the agency is looking for. Like they'll say, make sure your comment is relevant. So, don't talk to us about like dinosaurs, whatever. They also say things like, we're seeking input on X, Y, and Z, right? But there isn't a lot of information on who the reviewers are or what kind of expertise they have. And so that's, I think, very interesting. I know that oftentimes when the agencies are dealing with a deluge of comments, they run into a lot of challenges processing these comments, and so it's a serious challenge for both the author and the reader. Yeah. Any other reactions, thoughts? Like, I'm curious, like, for any other comments that you read, did you find anything where you thought like, oh man, maybe the authors should have looked at, this, tool for finding information on air pollution and so on, or something like that? I'm curious if anyone, yeah.
One thing really to the Data Conservancy, when they talk about the fact that the rule might impact or probably will impact the ability of communities to do, the ability of communities to do controlled burns. And one of the things that we don't know, we thought maybe the wildfire group at ESIP would know, we were looking for a way to link controlled burns with ambient air quality. And we have no idea if such a thing exists, but we don't know if they do either.
That's interesting to hear. Yeah, I was thinking too of the wildfire cluster. I mean, it's your point about like, how do you link people to the right informational resources? I think the point there you made about controlled burns, I think about that too from like a description standpoint, like other websites, data sets out there that are described in such a way that if somebody's looking up information on controlled burns, that they can encounter that data. I don't know, but it's a good point. Yeah, I think it's a serious challenge, making things discoverable from like different angles or different uses. Like, how are people going to use the data if they're interested in like controlled burns and so on? So yeah, this is great. Any other reactions? What about this group? Any? Yeah, I'll give us. So the microphone, please grab the mic. Thanks.
Yeah, we were looking at the Environmental Law and Public Policy Center public comment. We thought that was a quite well-written comment. And so they had cited measurements that I think they had taken themselves using locally based sensors to figure out what the air pollution levels were in south side of Chicago, where many people are living under poverty level and how children are affected by the pollution levels. And they're recommending that they have stricter than EPA proposed standards for particulates. The thing that's not clear there is on what data the commenter's recommendation for 8 micrograms per meter cube was based. So it's not clear. I don't think they cited any scientific research that justifies that comment.
I see. Yeah. So they refer to some local locally collected data, but do they actually cite it? I don't remember exactly.
No, they did talk about the data that they had collected and what the levels of pollution were during various months of the year, clearly showing that during the summer months it was much higher than in winter months. And given all of those things, their recommendation is that the EPA should have a stricter standard. But they had a specific number like 8 micrograms per meter cube, and I didn't see the justification. I might have missed it.
Yeah, I see. No, I see that. Yeah, you're right. I guess, yeah, that is one thing. It's one thing to show that there's a lot of pollution, and another thing is justifying a particular number. Yeah, and there is an aspect there where there's air pollution data, but then there's also epidemiological studies that sort of look at for causation between the pollution and health effects. So yeah, that's right. I mean, I wonder how much of a hurdle it would be for a group like that working on like that is a local kind of group to provide that kind of evidence or justification for their.
This group is not particularly local, given the footer of their letterhead. They cover like 13 or so states, different states. their headquarters in Chicago, Illinois.
Mhm.
And so they were doing a study in the neighborhoods of Chicago
Mhm.
and suggesting that the standards be stricter.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So thanks for.
I think I have a few comments. I think
Yeah.
I think what related to us is probably data quality. You know, since we are from the data quality cluster. You know,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I think how reliable those measurements are, whether or not they can be go through the court challenge. You know,
Mm.
yeah, same thing for satellite data. You know, and other model data. You know, whether or not the quality is there. You know,
Mhm.
that's a key point too. You know.
Uh-huh.
Just like you get a speeding ticket, people challenge it whether or not you calibrate
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
you know that.
Yeah. No, thank you for that comment. Yeah. I guess it would be interesting if they had the ability to also provide like an analysis of if they provided greater access to the data that they reference around, and especially around its quality, whether that would affect how an agency might respond to their comment. Yeah. Yeah, actually, yeah. So thank you everyone for those comments. I wanted all of you to get a chance to look at these comments because I think they're very interesting documents and interesting examples of how people engage with, so air pollution data, and really depending on the comment, all kinds of scientific information and data. So
Did you want to go about the construction one?
oh yeah, right. You
Yeah.
did the consignment, yeah.
Because I think this was against increasing the current standards. And they started by citing EPA studies showing that air quality has generally improved over time and that these standards are adequate. And their primary argument was, because one of the things that the regulations have to do is, take public health into account, but, also best available technology and best available implementable and economic, they have to look at various economic burdens as well. And they're making the argument that if you make these requirements stricter, it is essentially could create bans on construction, particularly on highway construction, where we all know that there's failing highway infrastructure. And so they're making the argument, if you do this, you have other negative impacts on kind of other basic infrastructure, as well as increased economic burdens on communities that already are negatively impacted economically. And so it was, to me, I'm very interested always in kind of people who are very for something and people who are against it, and finding kind of, and they used EPA studies, they used National Highway Transportation Safety Administration studies. It was a fairly well documented, it's not necessarily persuasive to me, but it is a very good perspective, I think, for EPA to have as they're moving forward. So, yeah.
One of the things that came up in ours was that there is this exceptional events thing.
Yeah.
Like forest fires.
Right, and they mentioned, so there are, they referenced how, states can do this, and if there is an exceptional event, what that means and how that affects everything. So they did reference some of that, but, construction is not, it's not necessarily an exceptional event. Right, but it is not necessarily like a single point in time for a relatively short duration. So I don't think like a highway construction project falls under exceptional events.
Yeah. So the point about
yeah.
the exceptional events, yeah, that one is very interesting. I don't think, the highway construction will fall into that, but it is, it is sometimes the case that the definitions for all the terms in these regulations are really found within them, and so just like it really is a huge hurdle to like address the proposed regulation accurately, and I think it's easy to kind of get into pitfalls when talking about like which parts of the rule apply in this situation and so on. And thank you for your comments around that that public comment, which I think is a good example of, you know, like a professionally written one. And, you know, it's I included that one because it's not just that because it's against, which is, you know, there's pro and con, but it also shows you like, you know, with the right skills and, you know, expert, you know, trained writers, you can really create something that is more usable by the agencies. And then it's interesting to me to think about how people who don't have those resources or who just come from a different place, who can't engage in that kind of depth, like how do they catch up to other groups that are, you know, like in this case, it was an industry group, so they're really speaking on behalf of many others. And yeah, so it's interesting, but yeah. So now I wanted to actually give you all an opportunity to kind of put yourself in the shoes of someone who is seeking to maybe create a guide on writing a public comment on this rule. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna split into groups again, and then we're gonna actually, you know, read several sections of the actual regulation that is being proposed, and then we're gonna look for resources that someone that would actually assist someone writing a public comment. And so I don't want to like overthink this, but what I did is that in a document that's linked on the notes doc, we're gonna have like this little tables where I think it would be helpful if you could just include things that you come up with that you find like, oh, this would be helpful if you were interested in the proposed revision of the primary standards and so on. And so like, for example, here, I as an example, I'm linking to a visualization on a paper on particulate matter pollution and how it affects different ethnic communities. So in this activity, you're also going to see these kind of workflows or like basically like this bullet point guided steps. What we're doing here is that we're kind of trying to draft a larger guide that will train volunteers to sort of create informational resources guides around different public comments. So, I mean, sorry, different proposed rules. The idea being, let's say a new rule is proposed, people want to submit a comment, they could use these guides to help aid the research process and the writing process. And so we want to create helpful guides, you know, so like if you go to an agency's website, there'll be a page for a new proposed rule, like EPA has one for the national and air quality standards, but you know, there's a lot of information that is not included there. I mean, the agencies have limited resources around just what they can, how much time and effort they can put into creating these kind of resources to help people write public comments. And so we kind of want to test that or get your opinion on that. So we're gonna kind of do that right now. So now I want you to go back to the notes doc, and I want you to go to the section that says activity number 2. There's going to be a link there to another Google document. In there, you're going to find two what I would call sort of commenting opportunities. One is going to be on the primary annual standard for particulate matter 2.5, and another one is on how the air quality index is calculated. And so in your groups, I just want you to kind of pick one or the other and take some time to actually read up on some of the background information, what the agency is proposing, and then use some of the kind of workflows that we've devised to try to sort of just like amass helpful resources, and then just kind of let us know how that worked out at the end. So I'm going to go around the room and make sure everyone is on the same page. Yeah, so let's get started. Give me a sec. Is this it? Yeah, so if anyone want to share something that they found that they thought would be interesting, relevant, like a resource? So for example, for the air quality index group, what you all come up with in your Uh-huh. Oh.
It was our friend Anonymous Frog. We're not sure who
Oh,
online.
that's cool. Okay.
But,
Yeah, so it's anonymous,
so-
yeah?
Yeah, so thank you, Anonymous Frog. Introduced us to a data set on NASA called Giovanni.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
really cool.
Yeah,
So-
that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, yeah. And wait, maybe I should open. Give me a sec, actually. Let me look at that. In fact, I want to see that. So it should be here. Giovanni, right? Oh, I see. And then the description was, yeah. Let me follow this link. That's cool. I don't have a lot of experience with Giovanni, but I just want to sort of see what they came up with. Okay, cool. So if that anonymous frog is online participant, could maybe they share how they identified this this table or these data sets here? Oh, I see. Oh, I see. Did a keyword search for. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, yeah. And then I see somebody else. This one here was from dataset search. Was that also the frog? Yeah. Okay. 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 I see. Let me see. Let me just follow this hyperlink real quick. Oh, okay. So this is data from from a paper. Yeah. What about the people who were looking at the primary annual standard? Would you guys find anything interesting that you think like, oh, people should totally look at this?
I think we were doing the wrong assignment.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, so if that's all right, yeah. So let me ask all of you. Yeah, like what do you think could be done, to create avenues for discovering relevant information and data for people writing kind of public comments. I see here there's some good comments on the workflows. Any thoughts in general? Yeah, yeah.
This Jonathan BOEM. So what it strikes me is that I've had to read a lot of text and tables, and what would be useful to me is to see visualizations, something that speaks to communicating complex scientific concepts that are difficult for non-experts to understand.
Yeah. No, thank you for that comment. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be great if I always sometimes wonder why if you look at the Federal Register where the rules are published, like it's just text, and then there's some tables. But it'd be great if they could include some of those visualizations there for people reading the rules. And yeah,
Even once you get like deep down into the text, it's still dense.
Yeah.
So I already shared pretty much what I put on those 2 stick-it notes in here about, I asked you, who is this workflow written for? Who is supposed to be using this workflow? Is it supposed to be people like us, or is it supposed to be kind of the general public in kind of what the end goal is? And so to think about that, because that whole long workflow is pretty intimidating. So breaking it down into chunks. But, one of the other things we started talking about was maybe something that would be really effective for EDGI to do or for other volunteers to do would be to provide plain language. What is this? What are they actually asking for comment on? Because I was talking about, I've been reading through a lot of comments on Louisiana's bid for Class 6 primacy and with EPA, and most of the comments are actually not about Class 6 primacy, but about geologic carbon storage, either pro or con. And so having a guideline of what are they actually asking for information on. But one of the reasons that I brought this up, Jonathan, by the way, this is Denise from Advanced Resources International. Forgot that I didn't identify myself. But one of the reasons I brought that up is, again, maybe Edgy could provide some of those visual summaries for people who are like, what does this actually mean? So maybe that might be a more effective way for Edgy to get information out. But again, it depends on who you're trying to reach. If you're trying to reach people like us, that maybe that's not as necessary. But if you're trying to reach a broader public, so I think that that's really something, you know, I love what Edgy is doing, but I think it's something that needs to be thought about.
Yeah. Thank you for that comment. Yeah, no, this is great.
I think it'd be great if you guys had the bandwidth, but I think EPA needs to be doing this because it's their responsibility.
So I have you know,
Oh, I fully agree with that. But, you know, EPA budget is being slashed just as much as BOEM and DOE and all of these other, you know, and I would love for EPA to be doing this. But if we can get the information out there until EPA can do it, let's do that.
Yeah. Did any of you read or look at the fact sheets? I linked to some of them in, go ahead. Let me just show that here. For example, so on the EPA site for just these air quality standards, they do publish these fact sheets. Did anyone read through one of these? I'm curious. Okay, yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Like when I look at this, I'm like, oh yeah, this is easier to read than the Federal Register. But yeah, like I do sometimes wonder, like, oh, maybe it would be nice if they could include like some nice figures, timelines, you know, visualizations to go with the summary info. But yeah, that might be like a way that Edgy contributes that would add value and in a more to a broader audience. I mean, and that would help a broader group of people. So thank you for those comments. So it's almost 1 p.m. and so that's when it ends, right? Okay, cool. So let's just let me see if I'll just do it like this. It's fine, right? Final things I wanted to say was, we are okay. Yeah, so we're trying to you know, help promote public participation in these kind of environmental decisions. One of the things we think a lot about in Edgy is like the difference between being like an expert insider and just being like a regular human being, and you know, how do these processes privilege perhaps one group over the other and so on. So I think this has all been useful feedback. And what I'll say is, you know, thank you for sharing your thoughts on this activity and our project. If I would love to hear more about what direction you think we could go, or if you have questions about what we're trying to accomplish, please let us know. So I will include, there's a link to another Jamboard there. So on your own time, if you'd be so kind, if you could leave some comments, that would be great. But yeah, I don't want to hold everybody up too much. So, and same thing with the online participants. But so I just wanted to say, you know, I wanted to maybe ask, does anyone else have anything they want to say or react to now that we've gone through this? Yeah.
I just had a quick question for you related to what Denise was saying earlier. What legal hurdles would you have if you were to provide a visualization of or visual aids and so on for something that EPA puts out? Would you be, would you need to get approval for whether it's really matching what EPA is looking for and that sort of
thing? That's a good question. I'm not sure. I mean, my instinct is that it probably wouldn't be a legally risky thing for us to do because the EPA is a federal agency. So, but it would be good if in a hypothetical scenario where, let's say, we're putting things out that a lot of people are using and looking at, it would be good to be in conversation with EPA to make sure that, you know, they feel like we are helpfully guiding people through this public comment processes and so on. I mean, we have, you know, had conversations with EPA staff about various issues, and so they are interested in some of the work we're doing. But yeah, I mean, I guess one concern perhaps would be perhaps not so much the issue might not be the EPA and EDGI, but what if there's a proposed rule that is has a significant impact on industry? You know, certainly we would have to be, you know, careful about who you might anger there. But I don't know if EPA would ever like sue a nonprofit for putting out like a guide on submitting a public comment. Yeah.
Well, you would actually be acting as an interpreter.
Yeah, I think
for translating what they have got in their text into something more easily understandable through figures and various other things.
Yeah.
So that interpretation needs to be correct.
Yeah.
So
yeah, certainly it would be on us to,
yeah,
you know, produce these,
right,
like interpret that information accurately, and you know, that would be very important. I can say that I think, you know, when some of the environmental nonprofit groups who try to get like comment campaigns going, or just like things like send a letter to your senator or your representative, stuff like that. I don't know if I don't know how much pushback they've ever received from agencies whenever they engage in those activities, but it's certainly something we're thinking about. But yeah, thank you for that comment. Yeah, so thanks again, everyone. No, this has been super helpful, actually. You know, we're gonna, this will really help us think about which direction we want to go with this, and then hopefully within like a year or so, we'll actually start deploying something out there and seeing how members of the public engage with this, and whether it actually helps them write better public comments. Because, you know, when I've tried to tie this to open science, I really do think that there's a great opportunity to like get open science to promote like democracy in this country. And, you know, so much of the work you all do, I think is great. And I think it's really exciting for me to think about how to, like, you know, build on that and make a great impact. So yeah, thank you. I guess I'll just wrap it up there. I don't see any questions online. So thanks again for the online participants as well.